So throttling back, I'm at about half to 40% throttle in the turn. I'm all the way back here. So I'm going to keep the nose down. Oh! What? Ah! Hey everyone, Chris here, TheRCGeek. Welcome back. Today we're taking a look at the FMS Ranger. Now, if you are in the market for a first airplane or first trainer airplane, something like that, this is a fantastic option. Now, this comes as a plug and play, which means you have to provide a receiver and a radio. FMS also has a ready to fly version, which includes the radio, includes the battery, includes the airframe. And so if you're looking to get into the game at a really low cost, that is a great option to move forward with. What we're looking at here is the plug and play, but everything that we discuss here is going to apply to the ready to fly version as well. It's designed to be a first trainer. They've got their gyro in there that also has a self-stabilization. But the biggest thing is, on the nose gear here, they've got this big spring on here. But the biggest issue when you're learning is going to be a nose gear first touchdown on landings. And so that helps deal with that. I want to point that out up front. And so as an airframe, as a flyer, it flies beautifully. Assembly was really quick and easy. It's all the major components. Interestingly enough, there's no spar in the wing, but that's taken care of through these truss supports, just like the full-scale airplane. These are structural components and they are necessary. The landing gear gets screwed into place, and then you add the horizontal tail and that gets screwed into place, and then you just screw the wings together and then install them onto the airplane. And so they've got these plastic keepers here that twist on and off. And so that is how you fasten the wing onto the airframe, and then the wing struts get clipped in place as well. And then just the spinner just clips into place, and that's it. And so in terms of the setup, I'm going to give my control throws, CG, after the flight, but at the end of this video, I'm actually going to go through the entire process of setting up the airplane on a new radio. And so I'll go step by step how I set it up, because there's certain ways that I like to do it, and I would recommend for you as well, especially if you're learning. And so in terms of flying the airplane, it uses a 3S battery. They recommend a 1300. I didn't have one, I had a 22. So we've got a 22 in here, and it's pushed as back as I can get it in there. CG feels really good. The airplane flies really nicely. The nice thing about it is it's aerobatic. So once you've conquered the basic flying, you can transition to doing loops, rolls, things of that sort. And so, things that are going to help you progress in your flying once you've got the basic, racetrack pattern. So let's go give you guys a flight, show you a bit what it can do, and then we'll come back, we'll talk about the control throws, we'll talk about the CG, and then I'll go through all of the programming steps in the radio. And so, yeah, let's do it. Taking off. Turn, come back the other way. A little bumpy out there.
Yeah.
High speed, downwind, pass, full throttle. Come around, do a roll. Pull up. All right, initiate the aileron. A little down stick in the inverted. There we go. Hammerhead out here. So, throttle, rudder, not the cleanest, but I'll see if I can land it kind of hard to test the landing gear. So throttling back, I'm at about half to 40% throttle in the turn. I'm all the way back here, so I'm going to keep the nose down. Oh, So, oh, what? Ah! It just rolled over from the wind. So I wanted to test the gear. You saw that the nose cushioned that really well. And so let's go get it back together real quick and we'll take off again. That was actually a really good test. The hatch didn't make it, so I was letting it roll and then the wind got me. Try to keep the hatch on and keep it upright this time. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna come back around and I'm gonna do a softer touch and go. Like I said, I wanted to try and land it hard and see how that nose gear would handle like a champ. That's what it's intended for. So definitely works. All right, so I'm at about 40% throttle there. All right. Just gonna hold a little bit of power. Try that again. So it's breezy. You're gonna need to keep a little bit of power in it. Yeah, the conditions are bumpy, so it's kind of difficult, but you got to carry power in it, especially when it's windy. All right, there it is. Really nice flying airplane. As a trainer, it's a really great choice. And so let's talk a little bit about the controls. We'll talk about the CG. And so where I'm at on the controls, I'm at my high rate elevator, mid rate aileron. And so what that equates to for the aileron, that's 100% travel left to right with no expo at all. For the elevator, I'm at 80% travel with no expo at all. And then on the rudder, I found that the rudder was really sensitive, but I want the full travel to try and do knife edges and stuff like that. So I added a bunch of expo to it to desensitize the steering. And so I'm at 100% travel here with 35% expo. That's way more expo than I normally would use, but because of the steering sensitivity, it really needs it. Now, if you find any of the rates are too sensitive on the ready to fly, you can adjust it mechanically by moving the push rod inwards closer to the center of the servo. So you'll need to remove the servo arm, change the hole that the push rod is connected into, and then put the servo arm back in place to mechanically adjust that. Otherwise, for the CG, now, as I mentioned, I've got a 3S 2200 pack. This is the Gen 2 Spectrum pack. It works really well. It flies the airplane really nicely. They recommend a 1300. I didn't have any of those. I only had 22s, and the CG feels perfect with that in there, actually. And so when you look at the airplane from underneath, if you place your fingertips behind the wing strut, if you pick the airplane up there, that's about where the CG equates to. It's a little breezy right now, so it's getting bumped around, but that's a really easy landmark, and I will put the dimension on the video of what that equates to, but that's an easy way to CG the airplane. And so, otherwise, we're gonna take it back to the shop. I'm going to run through the entire programming with you guys, showing how to set up a brand new model with this airplane. I hope that'll be really helpful for you. I know if you're learning, it's probably a daunting task to think about programming a radio, and so I want to go through that step by step for you. Really fun little airplane. It's aerobatic. You can have lots of fun with it, but yeah, let's take it into the shop and then we'll go through all that programming with you. So we're back in the shop now. Let's talk about setting up this airplane a little bit. First of all, this is the plug and play version, and so you've got to install your own receiver into it. When you look at the servo menu, or you can scroll and see the monitors, the stick monitors, it will label for you what each port is on the receiver. So we're using Spectrum here, so port 1 is throttle, port 2 is aileron, port 3 is elevator, and port 4 is rudder. There's one additional lead that gets plugged into the receiver, and that is for the gyro. They've got a self-leveling gyro on this, kind of like safe or rate gyro. You can switch different functions. And so that needs to go into an additional port. So you need to have at least a 6-channel radio. So let's take a look at the radio. We'll go step by step setting this up. And yeah, let's go from there. All right, so I've got my 3S2200 pack here. This is going to go in here. So I'm just gonna plug this in. We need to have this plugged in to set this up. All right, so from there, once it all initializes, all right, so we've got control of the airplane. So what I'm going to do is we will go in here into the radio, and I'm going to talk step by step what I have done here, all right? So first things first, in the servo setup, if you find that any function on the airplane is operating in reverse, you go to reverse and you can change the direction. So for example, I needed to change the aileron and the elevator directions in the radio, and that gave me the correct directions for the airplane, okay? And so you just click up and down, all right? And so that's it. From there, we need to set up our rates, okay? And so on the rates, there's 2 places you can go. When you look in the servo menu, there is travel in here. That is the maximum amount of travel. You can actually drive these servos greater than 100%. You can go all the way up to 150, okay? For this airplane, don't need to worry about that. We're gonna stick to 100 here. We're gonna leave this alone, and we're gonna do all of our custom setup here in the dual rate and Expo menu, all right? First things first, I like to assign independent switches for my aileron and elevator dual rates, or in this case triple rates, because these are 3-position switches. For ailerons, we come down here, we'll click this, I'm gonna flip the switch, and that gives me, or that assigns this switch to the aileron rate only, okay? So we come back here, we come back up. Now as we flip through this, you can see that it goes from 100% when I flip the switch all the way forward down to 80% and then 60%. And so to change that, I'm gonna leave it at 100 and for my high rate. I'm gonna go to mid rate, and if I want to adjust this, I just click this and scroll. So by changing the percentage, we are changing the rate at the aileron, all right? And then down to 60%. Additionally, there is an exponential down here. That is to help kind of tune the feel around the center. For this airplane, I didn't find that I needed any exponentials, so I wouldn't worry about that too much here. But you may find in the future, as you gain more experience, get better, that hey, an airplane might feel good in the maximum rates, but it doesn't, it's a little too sensitive around center, and so that's where you can tune the Expo. And if you're flying 3D, guys, really leverage Expo a lot. So then again, we got the elevator, it's the same thing. All right, so we've got 100% high rate, 80% mid rate, and 60% low rate. And I set it up exactly the same. And this is generally, when I'm talking about a plug and play airplane, this is generally how I will set up my different rates. I'll start at 100, go to 80, go to 60. So that way when I'm doing a maiden, I have options. For example, if my aileron rates feel too sensitive, then I can reduce them. But if my aileron or my elevator rates feel good, I don't change them there, right? But if I have everything tied to one switch, that means that everything changes. And so having that independent tuning between aileron and elevator is highly recommended. Lastly, for the rudder, you can assign multiple rates on the rudder. I don't personally do that just because I like to do knife edges and things like that. And so I will typically leave this at 100%. If I find that it's too much, then I'll turn it down, but only after flying the airplane. You'll notice down here, I have 35% Expo on the rudder. That's because the steering was extremely sensitive. And so I highly recommend tuning that up or reducing your end points to reduce the steering sensitivity. When you're learning, you're not going to be using a whole lot of rudder really, but it is very important. And so that is where dual rates in Expo, I like to change my rates. I do this on every airplane that I program. I will have aileron rates here, elevator rates here, and 100% on the rudder, and then tune accordingly based on the flight. Now there's one additional thing when we look at the monitor here. All right, so we've got, you can see throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, and I have one additional switch assigned, and it is right here. And you can see this aux1 over here is moving as I move that switch. And that is for the gyro. And so on this particular airplane with the FMS Gyro, if you want to utilize those functions, you need to assign it to a switch. And I highly recommend a 3-position switch because there are three different modes that you can use in flight. There is a rate gyro mode, which I have set up here. There's an off mode where the gyro is off completely, and then there is a self-leveling mode, and it works kind of like Spectrum Safe. All right, and so to do that, you have to go into the System Setup menu, hit yes, and when you go down here to Channel Assign, I have it plugged into Channel 6, and so I just select that, select the switch that I want, which is switch D, and that is how I assign that switch. Now, for me, I wanted the rate mode at the top and the self-leveling mode at the bottom, and that's personal preference. And so if you find that you need to adjust it to suit your preferences, you just go into the Servo Setup menu and the reverse function and just reverse it one way or another to get it to work in the manner that you want. I like, for personal preference, all my switches forward when the gear is down and the flaps are up, and I actually use this switch for my flaps, and I use this switch for my landing gear, and that's just my personal preference. One last thing to mention is throttle cut, and I highly recommend a throttle cut. So you come in here to throttle cut, and all you have to do is assign a switch to it. Obviously, I already have a switch assigned, and so that's it. And so now when this is active, the throttle cut is on, the motor will not turn, all right? And so when it's on, then it will turn, all right? Lastly, timer. I like to set up the timer a certain way, and so it's set up in a way such that when it goes off, that is my time to set up for landing. And what I'll do is I'll set the time here. Right now I've got it at 4 minutes. I like to have it set up that when this goes past 45% on the throttle, that it will start my timer. And it just runs continuously. And so down here, this one time is selected to active. You can inhibit or active. And so that way, having that active, when this goes past 45%, the timer will run. And you can see that here. There goes the timer, and it will run continuously. And again, that's just personal preference. And then when this goes off, that's my time to set up for landing. Yeah, that's the gist of it. All right, so there we have the FMS Ranger. This is a really great flying airplane. It's a really excellent trainer. And so if you are looking to get into the hobby, this is an excellent option. It's extremely forgiving on the landings based on how they have the landing gear all set up. Otherwise, it's extremely forgiving to fly. It's docile, and so yeah, great first airplane if you are in the market for it. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to see my latest scratch build, you can see that here. Until next time, I'll see you at the field.